Well, hello everyone. This is my second video here. I'm on the Falls Road in West Belfast. What I want to do is I'm going to do a wee bit of history of Belfast. It's a beautiful sunny day. You can see the nice blue skies above, and just going to turn the camera around and show you what is known as the International Wall in Belfast. So here we go. Today I'm really going to chat about what's happening in Palestine, because I'm sure we all are aware of the 11 people martyred in Nablus recently by the Israeli terrorist force who went in and used the mosque, I believe, as cover, and some of them dressed as women, went in and brutally murdered 11 people, martyred 11 people, mostly civilians, injured another 100, shot, 25 seriously wounded. So I thought this would be a good place to do this, because as you can see, lots of people in Belfast, in Ireland in general, see parallels between Ireland under British military, financial and governmental occupation for over 800 years, and they see what's happening in Palestine from 1948 and before as another colonial occupation of a sovereign indigenous group of peoples by foreign land grabbers, criminals, thugs, murderers, carpetbaggers, people from the white colonial Europe who have moved into the region with the plan of creating a Jewish homeland in the heart of Arabia. So for anybody who's been here, these are iconic paintings on the walls on the Falls Road. These are the 10 hunger strikers, and we also remember Frank Stagg and Michael Gaughan, who died on hunger strike in the 1970s. Just going to walk along the wall as I'm really talking, I suppose. What I'd like to talk about, as I say, is Palestine. Now, what happened in Nablus only happened a few days ago, but I mean, this ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestine, of the Palestinian people, the theft of their land, their resources, their water, their homes, their dreams, their hopes for the future, their very lives in many cases, people imprisoned without trial under administrative detention, a law that goes back to the British mandate in Palestine, so long before the Zionists built modern Israel on the broken bones and the broken dreams and the broken bodies of the Palestinian people. Palestine was occupied by the British, so there's no real surprise there. Unblock Cuba, couldn't disagree with that. We're going to turn the corner here in a wee second, and you're going to see some more murals. Some of these are dedicated to Irish republicanism, some of them are dedicated to the men who fought and died for Irish freedom. Some are, it's called the International Wall because a lot of the murals have an international dimension to them. We've already seen Palestine and Cuba. It's just a pity we don't have one for Yemen. This is Northumberland Street. There you are. There is Neil Khalid, who I had the honour and pleasure of meeting in Beirut in 2011 at the Palestine, Viva Palestina summer school in the American University in Beirut. So James Connolly, leader of the 1916 Irish Citizens Army. Empires fall and tyrannies perish, we will rise again. He died in 1916 as a signatory to the Irish Proclamation of Independence. And anyway, we shall get back to Palestine, because to understand what's happening today in Palestine, we really need to review what has happened in the past and how really Israel came into being. Israel really, has been created, as they will tell you, as a bulwark against anti-Semitism, that Jewish people were being persecuted and as such needed a land of their own in order to be able to defend themselves against pogroms. Now, I don't entirely disagree with that analysis. I think it is correct. But the facts are the Palestinians never had pogroms against the Jewish people. In fact, Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people lived side by side in Palestine, peacefully, respectfully lived side by side, tolerated each other, were friends, shared bread, and respected each other as neighbours. I'll let you read these different murals here as we go along. So, it was really European anti-Semitism. In 1492, there was a purge against Jewish people in Spain. Many of them fled, and some were welcomed into the Middle East as religious refugees. As such, here's a wee mural for the Tamil Tigers. So, in order for, this is new, I haven't seen this before, Key 48 Belfast. There's the Balfour Agreement, two peoples, one struggle. Well, there you go, guys, that's exactly what I'm trying to explain here on this little short tour. So, in order to protect Jewish people from European anti-Semitism, from pogroms, from what were basically, you know, the kings and the monarchs and the people who had borrowed money off the Jews, if we go back in Jewish financiers. If we go back in history, there was a time when Christians couldn't lend money to other Christians. I don't know if usury is the correct term, but that allowed people to step into a vacuum, a financial vacuum, where people who wanted money had to go to people who were non-Christian in order to finance whatever their projects were. Now, these were people who had money. These were the people who were basically the leaders of the countries, like the Tsar in Russia and the kings in Spain and the people in, you know, the elite in England and stuff. So, yes, there were pogroms against the Jews. Anti-Semitism was rife in some countries, encouraged by some of the leaderships in these states because they didn't want to pay back the money. They borrowed the money and they didn't want to pay it back. Here's a very interesting mural here. This is about Irish Republican prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, both sharing the same ideals. I was here when this actual mural was put up, and it was by the renowned Brazilian artist Carlos Latuf, and it was in 2015. And Danny is one of the well-known Belfast muralists, and the two of them collaborated in this. So as you can see, it's Palestinian and Irish hands of freedom and solidarity across the prison regimes. So, in order to negate anti-Semitism in Europe, the first Zionist Congress was in Basel in Switzerland in and around the 1890s. The idea of the Congress was to find like-minded people who wanted to form this new kind of entity, this new land, this new country, where the Jewish people could be safe from European anti-Semitism. This is a plaque to mark a guy who fell at Jarama during the Spanish Civil War, who fought for the Republic of Spain against Franco and the fascists. So, let's continue on here. This actual wall here leaves Republican West Belfast and enters Loyalist pro-British West Belfast. So we're going to go along here a wee minute or two. You can see these security gates. These are closed at night when it gets dark. We're 25 years into the peace process, having signed the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, and these are still locked at night in order to protect and separate the two communities. So, the first National Zionist Congress of 1897 or whenever it was approximately then, they decided that they needed to find a land without a people for a people without a land. But unfortunately, Palestine had inhabitants. Palestine had been occupied for millennia. So what happened was various different places. I believe Madagascar was one possible place. Part of Uganda was offered by the British as a new Zionist state, which was turned down. Zionism is a political ideology. It has nothing to do with Judaism and the religion of the Jewish people. And it was very much a secular organisation. Here's these kids. It was very much a secular organisation that was born in Basel in Switzerland. So they started the Jewish National Fund in Britain, and the idea of the Jewish National Fund was to buy up land in historic Palestine for Jewish settlement, Jewish colonial Zionist settlement. And that's what they started doing. Palestine, like most of that part of the Middle East, it's called the Middle East because of its position relative to Britain, apparently. So they started buying up the land, and they started to move Jewish immigration into Palestine. So nothing to do as yet with the Second World War, nothing to do with the terrible events, the Holocaust and the millions who perished under the Nazis, including 27 million Russians who died defeating the Nazis so that the Jewish people could be freed from those camps that were mostly in Eastern Europe and mostly liberated by the Red Army. So, the Jewish National Fund started buying up land. There was Jewish Zionist immigration to Palestine. Israel did not exist because it didn't come into being until 1948, after the events of the Second World War. So land was bought up in Palestine from absentee Turkish landlords. As I said, that region of the world was part of the Ottoman Empire before the First World War. So what we had was the Jewish National Fund buying up land in Palestine for Jewish migration or emigration to Palestine. And when they bought the land from these absentee Turkish Ottoman landlords, Palestinians weren't allowed to work on the land, as far as I know. These were like communes that were being built in order to put the Zionist Jewish footprint firmly in the land of Palestine. So if we fast forward then to the First World War, this is the loyalist side of the international wall. I'm going to do some stuff on that very shortly. You can see the parallels that the people on this side of the Peace Wall in Belfast have an affinity with Israel, the Jewish state. They support Israel because they think Israel is tough on terrorism, but as a very good friend of mine told me before, Israel was built on terrorism. I'm sure you can see this mural directly opposite, which I'm going to go to fairly shortly. So if we fast forward to the First World War, 1914 to 1918, the whole of what is regarded as the Middle East, West Asia, was under Ottoman control. The British went to the Arab leaders and said, we will give you your freedom if you help us fight the Turkish Ottoman Empire. So basically you help free us from you help us fight the Turks, and we will give you your liberation. But the Balfour Agreement, it's a secret agreement that was done or signed between the British government and Lord Rothschild. Was signed in 1917, I believe, before the end of the war, where they promised to facilitate a Jewish state within historic Palestine. So while they told the Palestinians to fight for their liberty and their freedom, they actually betrayed them and had no intention. Typical duplicity of the British government and the British elite at the time. Just going to turn the camera around so that you maybe see me for a change, rather than the walls. So after the First World War, the French, instead of giving the people their liberty in the Middle East, then became the new de facto rulers. They became the new military occupation of Palestine. Under the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they redrew the map of the region, created completely new countries that had never existed, new states with new borders and with new, they had new ethnic groups. People that had never lived together before were suddenly forced to coexist side by side in these new states. So then we had Lebanon under French control, we had Iraq under British control, we had Syria, I think, under French control, we had Palestine under British control. So the victors of the First World War, we promised freedom to the people of the Middle East. When the war was over, they enslaved those very same people. They enslaved them, they militarily occupied them, they stole their resources, and imperialist Britain and the capitalist cabal continued apace. So I'm just going to turn this around again. So what we have is then between, from 1901 on with the Jewish National Front, they proceeded to buy up land and slowly but surely change the what would you call that, the ethnic balance of Palestine. Indeed, in the 1920s, there were riots in Jerusalem. There were that many people, Jewish people, Zionists, emigrating to Palestine, buying up the land, refusing to integrate. Most people, when they go to a new country, say an Irish person goes to America, they are an Irish person living in America, but if they have children, those children are American because they're born in America, so they become second generation American Irish, and then their kids, who are the grandchildren of the original people who emigrated, are American with Irish ancestry. So if you refuse to join with the people that you're the country that you have emigrated to, it's bound to cause friction. That's what happened in the 1920s. In Jerusalem, they were, I suppose you would call them race riots, as the Zionist thugs took over more and more and more land. Now, I could talk about this all day long, but I'm going to keep this video down to about 22 minutes. I'm not going to go through this here, but you can see Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson. The future is yours if you have the will and if you have the faith. Now, this man was the leader of the Zionist regiments who fought alongside the British during the First World War. His ashes, if you want to read this, or I'll read it out. Finally, as the ashes were laid to rest once again, the 4th of December 2014, as the choir and the Israeli Defence Force paid tributes to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu extended his own personal salute. Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson officially achieved the status of time-honoured Christian Zionist legend. This is a man born in Ireland, joined the British Army, fought for Zionism. In all of Jewish history, we have never had a Christian friend as understanding and devoted, referring to Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson, words by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So we're going to return to the other side of this peace barrier, which is a misnomer because it doesn't keep the peace. This is a full celebration of British war criminals. India, Australia, South Africa. Britain's war crimes are renowned throughout the world, but they're celebrated by the loyalist people of Northern Ireland. A colonial rump who landed here in the 17th century under what was called the Ulster Plantation. Anyway, so fast forward, race riots in Jerusalem in the 1920s, a breakdown in law and order, ending up with more and more and more kind of, the immigration to Palestine was unregulated and was very much welcomed unofficially by the British government. So if we go forward into the Second World War, there was the birth of really the formation after the Second World War in Palestine of the Stern Gang and the Haganah. There was three of them. There was the Stern Gang, there was the Haganah, and there was the Irgun. The British government said that these people were terrorists who were using, because they were terrorists actually. The first time I would agree with the British government about anything, Zionist terrorism. These people used violence to set up a parallel state within Palestine to eventually become Israel. So they basically murdered Palestinians, took their land, and in 1948 the state of Israel was born in terrorism and continues its terrorist atrocities today. So that's nearly it from me. All I'm going to say is it's important that people realise the truth and the history of what Zionism is doing, not only in the Middle East, but it is destabilising the world. We should all stand with Palestine, and under international law, Palestinians have the right to use whatever means necessary to resist in an illegal occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. Okay guys, bye bye.